SMU at Penn State. This is probably the game, most of all, that I think the weather will have the biggest impact. Because with Ohio State, Tennessee and Ohio State, I actually think that the weather almost favors Tennessee. It's going to be cold, yes, sure, but they want to run the ball. SMU they're balanced. They're an offense that likes to play. They like to run, they like to pass, and then there's Penn State who just wants to shove it down your throat. And this is one where I think the weather is going to play the biggest deal. But SMU's explosive offense, it did wake up in that second half. Yeah, it looked like it was going to be a little worrisome there for a minute against Clemson in the ACC championship game, but they showed their potential. They showed what they could be. I mentioned Kevin Jennings, Brashard Smith. I mean, that's that balanced attack. Brashard Smith, though, is the guy that I'm circling. I'm underlining that guy. I have to stop him. He's a converted wide receiver. He can do it all in the passing game, too. Runs the ball really effectively. And it's just because with Kevin Jennings in this explosive passing attack, everybody can beat you. They've got 7 different guys with 20-plus catches. They have 7 different guys with 300 yards receiving. They have 8 different guys who've caught a touchdown pass. This SMU team, it spreads the ball around, except for Brashard Smith. I mean, he's the guy who I need to stop if I'm Penn State. And I think that ultimately, if I'm Penn State, I feel pretty good because Abdul Carter is the best defender in the Big Ten Conference. And I think Abdul Carter is going to be the biggest player in this game. If you look at one individual player, he's the Depoy Defensive Player of the Year. He had 10 sacks, 19 and a half tackles for loss. I think both of those numbers were the best of the Big Ten. I think that actually the sack numbers was second. But look, he has the ability to flip this game over. Just has that knack. And that is really the biggest thing for me in this game. That and the fact that I'm sure we're going to talk about it here, an elite SMU rush defense matching up with that highly touted Penn State rushing attack. And I'm sure that's the direction you're going to go. So, Abe, take it.
Yeah, man, I'm all about it. But here's the thing. Penn State ran the ball the way we've been waiting for them to run the ball all season long in that loss in the Big Ten title game. And I've been on this kind of button that Penn State was going to lose the last 2 games of their season. Once they got into the Big Ten title game, I'm like, they're going to lose in this game. And then honestly, they're going to host and lose again. Even in the loss, though, the performance against Oregon was really impressive, and it's kind of made me rethink that mindset. I think if they can run the ball with the same success that they did against Oregon, against a very good SMU run defense, I think that certainly spells some success. The one thing I want to say about SMU, people are going to judge by one game that they watched, right? You and I have watched SMU. In fact, before the season even started, we were talking about SMU. I think a lot of people saw this game against Clemson and say, how is this team getting in? Guys, they made a lot of mistakes, costly mistakes, key mistakes, but those are mistakes they did not make most of the season. 2 massive errors on special teams to go along with early turnovers. I think if they can clean it up, they can play a much stronger game, and I think they will be able to surprise some people. I think Kevin Jennings is going to surprise some people who haven't really seen them, and I do think it's interesting that the second half they had against Clemson, and can they take some momentum built there and move it forward? But they've got to clean it up. They're obviously not going to go on the road and beat Penn State with terrible special teams, missed field goals, huge returns given up, et cetera, and multiple turnovers from your quarterback. So they've got to clean that part of it up. But I think this is a winnable game. The question for me is what Penn State team are we getting? And now we start to talk. You talk about pressure, and I agree. Ryan Day is under the most, but James Franklin's got to win a big game at some point, and if not now, when? But this is a Penn State team, and there's a lot of teams I can say this about. It is not just Penn State. I just don't know what Penn State team I'm getting on a given week. They have done a very good job of rising to the occasion, albeit in losses. I thought they were outstanding against Ohio State. I thought they were outstanding against Oregon. Oregon's just the best team in the country right now. They're going to have to raise their performance to the level of those games, because I think SMU can be that dangerous.
Yeah.
And again, what's going on with the run game? We waited for it and waited for it and waited for it. It finally showed up at the end of the year. Can they bring that one out one more time? I think if Allen and Singleton run like that, SMU is going to have a real tough time, as you mentioned, especially potentially dealing with some inclement weather. But I'm interested in this one. I think SMU, again, a lot of people watched one game, and it was potentially SMU's worst game of the year, right? Or at least their worst half of the year in that loss to Clemson. I think SMU's got a little something in store for people. I don't know if they're going to go on the road and win this game. I think it's going to be a challenge, though. I am giving them a fighter's chance big time in this matchup.
Yeah, and look, if SMU does want to win this game, you have to stop the run. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, it's that simple. They haven't had a single 100-yard rusher since October the 5th. It's been a little while since then. That was when Isaac Brown did it for Louisville. And look, Kadrian Allen, Nick Singleton, both of them had a 100-yard game against Oregon. And this team, just plain and simple, is not playing its best football when it doesn't run the ball well. But when well, let's say Tyler. I'm trying to think of a way to bring in Tyler Warren, because look, he is a massive factor here for Penn State here in this game. If the rushing attack isn't working and they need something, they fall back on Tyler Warren. And he's been that good. He's been that X factor for them throughout the course of the season, both in the passing game, where look, he set a Big Ten record for yards in a season, and then he runs the ball. He'll line up in an H-back role, and he'll run downhill on you. He'll play at a wildcat quarterback position, and he'll run downhill on you. He can do everything. You know, he's a Swiss Army knife. In a season where a Swiss Army knife won a Heisman Trophy, Tyler Warren was another fantastic one. You know, I mean, like he has been tremendous this season. So I think Penn State, when it's all said and done, is going to have just too many weapons. And I think that there's going to be 106,000 screaming Nittany Lions in there that are going to make it very difficult on SMU. But I think that's really what it comes down to. I want to see what the Penn State offense does against the SMU defense. I think the SMU defense is going to be fine, unless Abdul Carter, like I said, just takes over this game. Then I think SMU is just sort of SOL in that regard. But Penn State, I think really they should establish themselves in this game. And you mentioned it too. James Franklin needs to win one of these big games. It's been hanging over his head for a very long time. I need to see him continue to improve. And look, I thought they played really well in that Big Ten championship game. And I think we see a repeat of that effort. So let's go ahead and pick this game. I realize we just forgot to pick the Penn State or the Ohio State and Tennessee game. So we're going to go pick that one here in just a second. But look, SMU at Penn State. What's your thought?
Yeah, I am going with the upset here. I really am. I think SMU's better than what they showed against Clemson. And the other thing that we've got to mention, SMU's playing with house money. Indiana is playing with house money. I think the amount of pressure on one team versus the other in those two specific matchups, huge disparity. And I think that mindset's going to carry them. I think they're better than what we saw last time out. I think they're very, very dangerous. And I just feel like Penn State offensively, and it's a great shout on Warren. I think if you can limit him, I think SMU's run defense speaks for itself. I really do. SMU is the fourth best run defense in the country. Mm-hmm. I think they could spring the upset here. I really do. And now, again, they got to play smart. They got to play clean. That's going to be the biggest aspect of it. But if they play clean, I think they win this game. I'm going with the upset.
They have to play clean. They have to.
Yeah, of course.
I think SMU needs to play a near perfect game to win this one.
Right.
I think for what you're saying needs to be correct. I think that they need to get out fast and they need to make Penn State uncomfortable. And I just don't think that happens. I think the home team wins. I think this is just too big of a spot for SMU. I think it's going to be a good football game. I think it's going to be close. I think that SMU is going to contain the Penn State rushing attack at least a little bit, but Tyler Warren, this just feels like the type of game he's going to go off for 12 receptions for 165 yards, right? That's just kind of what it feels like. And I think that's just really going to be the difference. And I think Penn State wins this one, but maybe not covering that spread. I think 4, 5, 6 points. I think that's what feels right to me.